Welcome to the second sessions on pride.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a pretty hard subject to deal with because, who needs to hear a series on pride?
Well, not humble people.
Yeah, it's the proud people. And the question is, are the proud people really going to listen?
Yeah, that's the ultimate challenge. Jesus talked about the blind.
Yeah.
And there's the old saying, there's no one quite so blind as the people who think they can see.
Yeah.
And the more we're convinced that we know what we're doing, the less we are likely to open our heart and hear some of the challenging stuff about, where we're at in terms of pride. So it is a real challenge.
Yeah, so in this series, we're going to really just highlight some things that are going to get us to think and ask the question, do we have a pride problem?
Yeah, and I think we said last time, let's just agree that we do.
Yeah.
Because it's probably the safest way to approach it, because pride's so dangerous because it separates us from God's grace. It creates a barrier between God's grace and us, and it's God's grace working in us. That's the measurable difference between whether we make it where God's got us headed or we don't make it. Yeah. And so we can't afford to assume we don't have pride. Yeah. Like that, might be true, but the safest to assume, hey, it's something we need to be aware of all the time, catching ourselves at it, spotting when it's at work.
And who doesn't want God's grace?
Yeah, only prideful people.
And God's grace is His empowering presence, enabling me to be the person He's created me to be, and to do the things He's called me to do. And God gives grace to the humble, but He opposes the proud. It's like when you got pride, you're putting God on the opposing team.
Yeah. And if you had the choice, and we really do have the choice of being, of having God on our team, of us, like you were saying before, humility is agreeing with God. Same thing as being on God's team. And I think if you think about what do we really want in life, we really want that thing that you're saying about grace. God's grace enables me to be and who He's called me to be. That's a pretty good definition of a meaningful life. And that's what we really want, is that we can get towards something like the promised land. A meaningful life is where we're being who God's called us to be. We're
going to look at a proverb, a little bit of a different proverb, but we're going to unpack some things from it. And in Proverbs 27, it says, "A person who is full refuses honey."
Yeah. And they go have jam instead.
No. Well, a person who's full refuses Krispy Kreme.
Yeah.
Exactly. Imagine being so full that you actually resist Krispy Kreme. But when you're full and you can't eat anything more, that's what we resist. But it goes on, to the hungry, even the bitter tastes sweet. Yeah, and we want to talk about how pride relates to our appetite. And how humility actually releases hunger. Again, Deuteronomy 8, the verse we read out last week, talked about, if you'll remember, that God led them into the wilderness to humble them that they might hunger. Yeah.
And then He feeds them. And I think it's interesting. We've all got friends, not us, other people who complain about the bitterness of life. Their work's really difficult, or parenting is really hard, or marriage, or challenges, or, all the sorts of things that we can get that are tough in life. They're tough, but there's that bitterness sometimes. And the question's got to be, are the circumstances really bitter? Or are you just full? Are you just full of yourself, full of self-importance, full of a sense of entitlement? Or are you hungry enough to really appreciate that, life's tough, but at least I have a job. Do you know what I mean? You might have a terrible job, but you have a job. It's that there's something about that humility, the hunger and humility dynamic that makes you appreciate what would otherwise be bitter. It would taste bitter to you, except that you're hungry for something. And I think, when it comes to life gets hard when you don't filter things through God's purpose. True.
Or the mission of God, what we've been born for. Our lives can't be just about ourselves. We're born for kingdom purpose, and God's got a reason for our existence. And our world's become small when it's all about me, I, and what I can store up, and how does it benefit me. And when you view life that way, it's like you have a very narrow existence.
That actually sort of folds into itself. Your life actually becomes smaller and smaller and smaller the more you focus on meeting your own needs, serving your own desires. Whereas a hunger for the purposes of God. And I love what Jesus said, He said his meat, or that's the old translation, but his food is to do the will of God. The will of God. So God sent him. He said, The oldest translation is, my meat is to do the will of him who sent me.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool. It's not just the will of God, it's the will of a God who sends us.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we know God's up there, but he's not just up there, he also sent you.
Yeah.
Like, I always think of it, when you're born, you weren't born in a place, you were sent to a place, to a time. And then God put you on the earth for a reason. That's fundamental truth throughout Scripture.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, my food is to do the will of him who sent me. That says a mission. I'm sent for something. Yeah. There's food in that.
That's just after the disciples went and got food, and they came back and said, hey, you want some food? He goes, no, I'm all good. I have food that you do not know of.
Yeah, food you don't know about, yeah.
And as believers, our food is connected to our mission.
Yeah, exactly.
And the question we've got to ask ourselves is, do we have an appetite for the mission of God?
Yeah.
Because, the greatest blessing is when food and appetite meet.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than having the appetite and no food.
That's a bad day. Yeah.
Or having food and no appetite.
Yeah. It's just as, that's dull, right? Yeah.
That's dull and insane. But when food and appetite meet, if we've got an appetite for mission, and we then see the need that we can minister into, is there we're able to release some of the kingdom of God into that space.
Yeah. And there's there's a personal fulfillment in that's not found anywhere else.
Yeah.
There's nothing that will replace a sense of eternal purpose in your life.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that will do that. And that's true. Eternal purpose is on the other side of humility. Yeah. It's on the other side of saying, okay, what am I here for, God? Where are you directing me? What are you leading me to?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate place to be.
I like this proverb because it says the bitter tastes sweet. I think one of the issues we can have around today is we have an abundance of resource.
Yeah.
And, when you get an abundance, you become a little bit more of a food snob or a connoisseur.
Yeah.
I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Rather than, when you're hungry, mince on toast tastes good.
It tastes really good.
It doesn't look that great, but it tastes unbelievable.
If it has a poached egg and some cheese, it looks right.
Even next level there. But is like sometimes because we don't have the appetite, to actually outwork some of the things that God is speaking to us about. We become a little bit picky and choosy.
Yeah. Or we're looking for a way to serve. We're looking at the menu of, the things God might be calling us to, and we're like, I don't really feel like that, Whereas I love Ecclesiastes says, find something to do and do it.
Yeah.
Grab hold of a thing to do. Grab a hold of a mission and do it. Right? That's that sense of hunger. Yeah. Well, here's something to eat. Let's eat that. Here's a way I can serve. Here's a way I can be a blessing, and just engaging humbly like that.
Yeah, because the call of God, He will always call you at inconvenient times.
Yeah.
It will never be convenient. And what we're going to do is are we able to push past some of the things that, will actually, not just push past, are we able to, not feed ourselves on things that the world would say will satisfy you and really come to God and let Him be the place, let Him fulfill the longings and the dreams in our heart.
Yeah.
I think just to finish this one off, what produces humility and appetite? Because humility and appetite are connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the kingdom, what produces that in our life? I like what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6. He says, when you pray, when you give, and when you fast.
Yeah.
He was talking about 3 spiritual disciplines that, I believe every believer needs to embrace at some level.
Yeah.
It's not if you pray, if you give, if you fast. It's when you pray. And he said, you've got to do it in the private place.
Yep.
So we're not doing it for people to see.
Yeah, it's not a religious exercise in the sense of a show.
Yeah.
It's a personal exercise in terms of ourselves.
And all of those things actually bring us to a place of humility, prayer, giving, and fasting.
Yeah. They've all got the hunger component to it as well, and that humility, Yeah.
So what we want you to do in your groups is talk about how those 3 disciplines bring you to a place of humility.
Yeah.
Because we know, as we've talked about, that humility releases grace. God gives grace to the humble. And so, how does fasting do that? You can talk about that. How does praying do that?
Yeah.
Why do we need to pray?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And why is prayerlessness a sin?
Yeah.
And how does giving go against, some of the pride in our life?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so how about talking about some of the mindsets that could have elements of pride, and let's talk about how we can actually build these spiritual disciplines into our life. Hey, God bless you. We'll see you next time.